All right, folks, good afternoon. I'm Joshua Ball. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of SOAR, and I want to thank everyone for joining us today for our second webinar with our friends at the Center on Rural Innovation. So we started this journey a few weeks ago with a kickoff call, and our idea with this program is to really empower communities and ideas to begin to get pen on paper, or to take ideas that are on paper and build further clarity around it. So we know that projects are as good as the work that goes into them and the partners that are in place. And we are very blessed to have a partnership with the Center on Rural Innovation, and they will be doing a workshop on community ecosystem capacity at the SOAR Summit on October the 19th and 20th in Pikeville. That's going to be a 2-hour session that will be a workshop format where we will separate folks based upon regions and communities. And we did this on a smaller scale in Hazard in June, and it worked out really well. So if you've not registered for the summit, please go on our website, soar-ky.org/summit. I will put it in the chat. We have 2 full days of programming. I am finalizing the exhibit list today. We will have well over 100 exhibits, which could be a record for the summit. And again, 2 full days of programming, and $50 is the registration price, but that is all inclusive, includes breakfast, lunch, and snacks on both days. That is also your ticket to the SOAR Summit reception with heavy hors d'oeuvres and refreshments. And again, that's all programming and the exhibit hall. If you're associated with a school or a college, we have student scholarships through a partnership with Toyota Show, and that will cover all registration fees for college students and high schools. If you're also associated with a high school or know someone at a high school, we will also provide transportation stipends to the high schools to bring groups of students to the summit to help offset that cost. So Nathan, I didn't warn you that I was going to do a shameless plug for the summit, but we want everyone to be there. And for those of you that have been there before, it is a great event. But with nothing else to say, I want to introduce Nathan Willingham. He is with the Center on Rural Innovation and is really taking the lead in this project with us. So Nathan, the virtual floor is yours.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, Josh. I appreciate so much being back virtually in Eastern Kentucky and working with SOAR. I have watched communities participate in that ecosystem development workshop that Josh is talking about, and it is really eye-opening to the participants that are in that. So I would second what Josh said about that being a great experience. Heard great things from the hazard exercises that went through. So what we're gonna do today is something that you could revisit after that workshop, and I think would help to refine thinking on how to move projects forward. Let's get the ever-present Zoom screen share. Let's make sure that I've got that going. Okay, so I'm Nathan Willingham with the Center on Rural Innovation. I again really appreciate the time that I've been able to spend with SOAR and getting to know Eastern Kentucky a little bit better. I'm actually in Northwest Alabama, so I'm also down here in the low mountains part of the Appalachian region as well. Been working in planning and economic development for about 20 years now. Started out working in West Tennessee, the flat part of the state of Tennessee, for the Department of Economic and Community Development. Did that for a few years and then worked for a regional planning commission that was also a local development district, if you're familiar with those, through the Appalachian Regional Commission. Did that for a dozen years or so, and then worked in higher ed for a while, and been with CORI, Center on Rural Innovation, for about a year now. All this time, been working on project development for economic and community development, workforce development, transportation, public transit, you name it. There's a lot of experience that I've had the privilege of working with local communities on different projects. Nowadays, I work on digital economic development, but a lot of the experience with grant writing and grant administration carries forward from the past. Today, we are, as Josh said, continuing to work on, or to continue to advance this partnership between SOAR and the Center on Rural Innovation. So what we're going to talk about today is this partnership and CORI's approach to digital technology-based economic development. we hope will be the foundation of some of the proposals that you present to us for economic development that we can then help you to launch in order to transform your communities toward a more digitally based form of economic prosperity. And then after we talk a little bit about the partnership and our model of economic development, the bulk of our time is going to be spent in a writing workshop that will help you to develop a concept for digital tech-based economic development. So the purpose of the relationship that we have are forging between SOAR and CORI is to help to increase the number and diversity and the quality and competitiveness of grant proposals from the Eastern Kentucky region. We're doing this in several ways. We're offering webinars and workshops to help understand federal grant funding opportunities and to help understand how to better refine the tools that you might need to help develop your stakeholders, to develop your concepts and your proposals into something that is more refined, more locally driven, more driven by the assets and resources that you can put together to effectively execute a project, but also that fits better with the funding priorities of a number of those federal funders that are out there. And as I mentioned, we're talking about this in terms of a ongoing engagement that has 3 phases. So this work, we're taking a 3-phase approach. Now we're entering the 2nd phase. Our first activity was to host a webinar where we talked about a range of federal grant funding opportunities to fund broadband and rural economic development focused on digital technology, and how communities might better access the digital economy. So here in the 2nd phase, where we are now, we're talking about how communities can use concept papers to as a tool for advancing their ideas for digital economic development. So what a concept paper can do in a nutshell is to provide you with a way to organize and to share ideas around a concept and to recruit support for that. So today's workshop is actually all about writing the concept proposal. And the exercises in today's workshop are designed to help you to think through the next steps in the growth of your digital economy. So and then going forward, after today, we'll actually receive these concept papers. We'll take copies of the papers that you develop over the next several weeks, and then we'll review those and do sort of a matchmaking between your ideas and potential fit with external funding opportunities, and then offer some advice and guidance on how you might refine some of those concept ideas in order to better fit proposals. A word of warning about today's activities. It is a writing workshop, and for a lot of us, writing is what might be considered a completely unnatural occurrence, something that just has to be dragged out of us kicking and screaming. I've done these kind of workshops before, and I promise we'll lose people during the course of the next hour and 15 minutes or so, because for some folks, they take a look at what we're talking about and they say, oh, I already know how to do this. And that's great. If you know how to do this, that's wonderful. I would say that even for folks that do know how to do this work, sometimes seeing the way that other people structure it, or sitting down and offering some structured time on the task of writing can be beneficial. But if you see this and you're like, oh, we can do that in our sleep, that's totally okay. For others, they get into it though, and it's like partway through the exercises, they'll say, this is hard. This is harder, and I just don't have the time or attention or ability to do this. What I would say to those folks is that it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be good at this stage of development. It just needs to be documented. It needs to be thought and reflected on and documented. So for folks that haven't gone through an exercise like this before, just stick with us, take a leap of faith with us over the next hour and 15 minutes. And what you'll see is that what we have seen is that those that do stick with us, they wind up with something that's valuable to them at the end of the workshop, whether it's something in writing that helps them to organize or structure a project today, or a set of tools and resources that let them sit down and in just 1 hour's time capture the soul or the essence of a project. For our purposes, a digital economy project, but for your purposes, it could be any kind of project. It's a process that can quickly organize thinking and capture ideas and document them in a way that hopefully gives you a foundation for going forward and getting additional support from local stakeholders as well as from external funders. So I want to spend some time talking about CORI's model of economic development, because it's really important. It's foundational to how we understand the digital economy and the kind of proposals that our partnership is really looking for. So if you think about the traditional economy in rural communities, most people think about an economy that's based on agriculture or extractive industries like forestry or mining, or manufacturing, usually based on some kind of locally extracted goods like forestry products or mined products, shipping and receiving that are based around those extractive industries and manufacturing and so forth. Now, we know that historically, these industries are the ones that have allowed communities to take and create something of value that has been exported outside of their community, sold outside of your community, and the sales generate revenues that comes back as wealth and prosperity for your community. So in essence, economic development can be thought of as the process of creating something that goes outside of your community to be bought and sold outside of your community that generates wealth internally, prosperity, good jobs, and good incomes related to them. We also know that globalization, automation, and a lot of forces that are really way beyond our control have hit rural communities especially hard, and have eliminated a lot of those jobs that we think of as being traditionally rooted in rural economies, manufacturing, forestry, mining, agriculture, and so forth. Now, while those forces and the impacts have not been isolated or contained just within rural communities, they have also affected urban communities. What we've seen is that urban communities have been able to restructure their economies in a way that takes advantage of professional services jobs, including digital technology jobs, as a way to replace those lost traditional industrial kind of jobs or traditional economic kind of jobs. And so digital technology jobs, as part of that, have allowed communities that have captured them to come up with another product or service that can be exported outside of your community, sold outside of your community, and generate wealth that comes back into your community. In other words, a new form of economic development based on marketing and selling digital products and services beyond the boundaries of your community to generate wealth coming back or returning to your communities. Urban environments, urban communities have had a bit more success at generating those tech-based jobs than have rural communities. And so that's created an opportunity gap. And so rural communities have not been able to as readily replace the lost jobs with high value, high paying jobs that export digital products and services and import the wealth that's associated with them. So CORI's model of digital economic development, our ecosystem model, is designed to help close that opportunity gap between rural and urban areas by focusing on these infrastructure systems and drivers that are necessary to create new technology jobs. For those that are going on to the summit and to our presentation on this, you'll have already had a primer on it. You'll already have seen some of the material that's likely to be presented there as well. But while we recognize that communities often struggle with foundational elements of economic development, such as housing and public health and sanitation and basic education and infrastructure programs, where our efforts focus is primarily on strategies that are in this bracketed area that focus on the necessary infrastructure and the direct drivers of digital economies. And the reason for that is because digital economies can create outcomes, jobs, high-paying jobs that import money from elsewhere that allow you to work on solving some of these more foundational issues that you might have in your community. Every community has them. It's not a rural problem. It's not an exclusively urban problem. Every community will continue to have a need of resources to focus on their foundational elements. And we think that by focusing on the necessary infrastructure and the direct drivers of the digital economy, you can capture new wealth and prosperity in your community that helps address problems across the board, whatever they may be. And so we focus primarily on this area that's bracketed on this slide in the necessary infrastructure and the direct drivers. Necessary infrastructure includes broadband, local leadership capacity, and co-working spaces. And of course, broadband, it's just the availability of fast and reliable internet, preferably fiber speeds. It's just necessary in today's day and age for rural communities to be able to participate in the digital economy. And it's not always available in smaller areas, and it's not always equally available or equitably available across urban or rural areas. But in our cases, what we've recognized is that it's not always in the community. And if it is in the community, it may not be everywhere in the community. And even if it is everywhere in the community, everyone in the community might not be able to access it. So those are the kind of problems of broadband infrastructure that need to be addressed to drive the digital economy. And of course, local leaders are essential to everything that takes place in economic development. And developing tech economies, it just can't happen without local leadership. Without local leadership, a community is unlikely to pursue the kind of programs and projects that are necessary to grow your digital economy. Lastly, in the infrastructure column, we talk a lot about co-working and entrepreneurial spaces, which are the physical locations in your community that are dedicated to fostering engagements in an environment that promotes co-working and entrepreneurship. These are just an integral, super important part of your digital economy, because they're places where workers and entrepreneurs, funders, and capital investors can all meet together and generate new and innovative ideas and relationships that help seed the projects and the activities that are necessary for success. So once you have those things in place, or you're starting to build them, you can also focus on the direct, what we call the direct drivers of the digital economy. And those are scalable tech entrepreneurship and support services, things like incubation, accelerator programs. These provide mentorship, networking opportunities, educational programs, and training resources that support scalable technology startups. And that often takes the form of an incubator program or accelerator program, and it connects people in the community and in the broader ecosystem to the ideas that are necessary to drive a tech economy forward. Of course, if you got a project idea, or I'm sorry, a tech idea, you also need capital. You got to be able to keep your business going while you scale up that business, while you prototype and experiment with the idea and eventually expand and grow that business, which takes access to capital, either from within your community or from outside of your community. And so communities need to be able to create and to leverage networks that fund capital activities. Workforce development that is technology-based is also critical, because the programs that provide the training and the education and skilling that's necessary to support digital economic development are often not as readily available in rural communities, but they're necessary in order to have the workforce that supports and sustains the firms that are working in the sphere or the realm of digital economic development. And then if there are jobs available, people need to be able to know about them. They need to be able to get access to them. So developing programs that connect people to job opportunities and provide access to digital jobs, whether it's career coaching or online job boards or other activities that bridge that gap between a person having a skill set and a person having awareness of where that opportunity in the community, where they can work with that skill set in the community. It's so important. And it's important in every industry, but it's especially important in the tech industry in rural communities, because a lot of times these opportunities aren't visible. There aren't stories being told about them. They're not as prevalent in our community. So making that connection intentionally is truly important. And then the last driver that we focus on here is inclusive tech culture building. And it really wraps around all the rest of the activities, because unless we are incorporating or including all members of our community in our economic development, some people are going to benefit and some people are going to get left behind. And so the gaps between different groups in the community and in your community context will continue to grow. And if those gaps grow and if people are left out, there's a really strong chance that the next brilliant idea doesn't get nurtured and doesn't grow into the next billion-dollar company. And so this is just a really central framework to the work that the Center on Rural Innovation does. And so it forms the foundation of the type of projects that we're hopeful to receive as we begin to evaluate and review concept proposals and provide additional support for proposal development. Because this is a big model, it's a complicated model, but fundamentally, we want to work with communities in the SOAR region in the context of where you are right now. And to help you to understand how projects can help move forward or advance these components of the digital economy, because honestly, we think that there's a place for this approach in every community, and that there's not a community that's so completely isolated that it can't start thinking about these components and how they might work together to move the bar forward, or raise the bar when it comes to the prosperity in your community that's based on the digital economy. And so here we get to the core of the activities for today, the part that is for some it's fun, for some people it's painful. And it's, the heart of our activities today are a writing workshop that focuses on developing new concept proposals or concept papers. And so this is the scary part for a lot of people, which, the writing exercises. And so the time that we've got remaining to us today, what I'd like to do is go through a series of exercises that provide some questions as prompts, and then I'll ask you to reflect on them with a limited amount of time, and then sort of a brainstorming or reflection time, and then a writing time. And then as you write down the responses, this can be useful for you to structure your thinking about what could go into a concept paper, and eventually develop that concept paper into something that you can share with others to get support, recruit support to your project, but also as a foundation for expanding into an actual grant proposal. There's a lot of people who ask these kind of questions, like, what if I already know how to do this? Well, first off, quick check. Do you feel like you're in the right place? If you're a professor or high school freshman, first day of school, is this the right homeroom for me? Right. Some folks may be like, well, this is way too rudimentary of a exercise for me. And others like, this is way too daunting. But I think that there's some value in this type of exercise for anyone, no matter their experience level, because fundamentally, really, really complicated things can be made understandable to us by a few simple rules. Oftentimes, a few simple rules or a few simple questions are exactly what it takes to take something that's really complicated and complex, and no matter how experienced you are with it, break it down into questions and answers that can quickly get you to a point where you can take action. Because getting sort of thought locked and just reflecting all the time doesn't get you to where you want to go. And taking too much time to write before you act, trying to perfect a proposal before you go out and speak to people about it, is also a mistake, because these are definitely organic projects that have to emerge based on conversations between stakeholders and amongst those that have resources to get things done in your community. And at the end of the day, all of this work is about getting the resources into the hands of the people that get things done in your community. Concept proposal is just one of those things that can do it. So if you already know this stuff, if you're not in the right place and want to drop off the call, I'm not going to have my feelings hurt whatsoever. But if you do think you need or could benefit from having a structured time today, or seeing a process that can get you to a what's the point kind of place in just an hour, this could be useful to you. If you already have a concept, that's fantastic. The questions and responses, the Q&A, reflection and writing can be helpful to refine that. And if you don't have one, that's also great, because this is a good starting point to help you generate a few ideas to get you rolling forward in the next several weeks. So the basics of what a concept paper is, it's a short, brief narrative summary of your project idea. It's a concept that helps you to sort of get your ideas down on paper, and then to share those ideas with others, with stakeholders and with potential funders. It's especially important to take your stakeholders that you think are going to have to help you do the work and engage them in the process of developing your concept into something that is a real strategy that's actionable. Because a strategy is one thing, but an actionable strategy is something that, some people would say you don't actually have strategy unless you have action to go along with it. And that action requires the engagement of your stakeholders. Oftentimes, it can benefit from external funding as well. And so a concept paper can help you to engage your stakeholders in external funding. The way it does that is by giving people a representation, something to read that proposes or that discusses the purpose and rationale of the project, talks about the service area and who's going to be impacted by the project, and then provides a few high-level details on the approach or the activities that you're going to use, discusses what the impact is, the outcome and results, and then also, especially important for funders, what's the ask? It's important for stakeholders too. What's the ask? What are you asking me to do or to provide in terms of resources that are necessary to carry this out? So it starts with why I should care about it. And what's the point? What's the purpose of the rationale or the need? Who's it going to impact? And then what is the contribution of the party that you're approaching or engaging to the overall project? And in just a few pages, a concept paper can be a very powerful tool to present that information. And so today, what you're going to need, time and attention for the next hour that we've got together. That's the most important thing. Second, some kind of writing implement, whether it's a pen and a notebook and some scratch or 8.5 by 11 printer paper, whatever it is, some scratch paper to take some notes. Or if you are so inclined, open up a word processing document like Word, a Notepad, something like that, so that you can actually, respond to these prompts. Take the time to work through the exercises with us. And then imagination, of course, is necessary to any kind of creative work that we do. And for certain digital economic development projects and concept proposals around those are a creative endeavor that takes some out of the box thinking. So bring your imagination. And the last thing on here is a need to grow. And it's in green because it's intentional. It may look a little silly, but it actually stands for something, which is the framework that we're going to talk through today for developing a concept proposal. So any concept, before it goes on a piece of paper, or while it's going on a piece of paper, concept is a set of ideas. And those ideas have to encompass a need, the goals that you're trying to accomplish, the realities of the environment that you're working in, the options that those realities and goals and needs shape, and then a work plan and the will. There's actually 2 W's in this grow, the work plan and the will to get things done. We're going to spend most of the time today talking about the first few bullet points because the work plan is something that usually has to be developed offline, outside of this kind of workshop, and also with engagement with others in your community, with stakeholder engagement. But this workshop will certainly help you identify your community's need to need to grow. Yes, it's a little silly, but hopefully it's a memorable device that you can remember what we're talking about. So I'm going to take about 30 seconds here, and you'll see that I'll be turning my timers. I've got egg timers or hourglasses on my desk for a workshop like this. Let's take about 30 seconds here and let folks get organized. Grab something to write with, grab another cup of coffee if you're so inclined, whatever you need to, and then we'll start back up on the next slide here in just a few seconds. I'll take the time to catch up on the Q&A and the chat as well. So as we go through the next few slides, I will definitely be using these timers. Yeah, and don't let it scare you. This is not intended to be frightening. Right? We're here to help refine ideas, not at all looking for perfection. And I see we still have the same number of participants as before. I didn't bore anyone or scare anyone yet. Okay. Forging ahead. Back on the screen share. Okay. Fundamentally, let's talk about a project need. I think that the heart of every project is people. And so I think we all probably agree. A human-centered approach is what's important. And so a project starts with understanding the need of people in your region, people in your community. I won't torture you by saying who are the people in your neighborhood from Sesame Street, but you understand what I'm saying. A project need is all about people and their needs. So in the next few slides, we'll sort of introduce the workshop format also. But in the next few slides, what I'm going to do is I'm going to present a question. I'm going to set a timer for about 30 seconds and just let you think about it and reflect on the response to that, on your response to that question. This should be a reflection moment, not a writing moment. But take about 30 seconds to think about the answer to this question. And then I'll let you know when that time's up. At the end of that time, I'll ask you to actually start writing down your thoughts from your reflection. And then I'll flip another timer and give you a couple of minutes to think about it. in this first section, at the end of the first couple of slides, I'm gonna open the floor up and see if there are those that want to volunteer. We won't be able to get to everyone, but a couple of people want to volunteer and tell us what they wrote down. That we can get a sense of the pace and the flow of everything and what other people are thinking. Like I said, we won't get to everyone, but hopefully we'll have a couple people volunteer to talk about their ideas. And then we'll move on to the next section. So again, I'll show you a question, give you about 30 seconds to reflect on the question, and then put about 2 minutes on the clock for writing activities. Hopefully that's all crystal clear. Hopefully everyone's caffeinated and has their pencil, pen, or notepad open in front of them, and we can get started. Okay, so project need is about people. People have to change in order for a project to be successful. Oftentimes change is painful. People only change if there is enough pain or enough care about the problem for them to take proactive steps. So my question here is, in your community, what is a problem that you think people care enough about to change how they act? Okay, that's 30 seconds. Some people probably already know exactly what. Some people are like, that's not enough time. But take your initial ideas, and now I'm going to put another 2-minute timer on the clock and let you just write down what you thought. What's a problem people care enough to actually change? There's probably some people that are cheating there right under the 30-second, but that's okay. It's about 45 seconds left. Okay, on my hourglass, that's time. I want to check in real quick. I'm not sure if we can unmute anyone, or if you just want to share it in chat, might be easier. I'm not sure about the Zoom settings, but anybody want to share what they put down? What sort of problem? I see one in here that's the lack of high quality work opportunities. Anybody else? I always wonder if people are too shy or if it's just taking a while. There it is. Okay, wow. This one is a good one. Let's see. The project area is very rural. It's plagued with poverty and low educational attainment. There are no large employers in the region, and for people to remain in place, small businesses must become viable and sustainable as an opportunity for residents of the community. The area has ample access to broadband, but individuals are not taking proper use of it as a means of employment small business or entrepreneurship. Yeah, that's a very detailed. Very detailed. All that in 2 minutes. 2 minutes seems like a long time if you're not active. Seems like a really short time if you're trying to get something scribbled down. But that's like get it to scale it outline. We're not trying to dress the whole Christmas tree. We're just trying to get the main branches into shape together. Meaningful employment without relocating opportunities. Yeah. Without relocating. Opportunity for advancement, fair wages, challenging. Desire to become self-sustainable, beginning with growing one's own food. Yeah, and so there's some things in there that I would encourage you to think in our framework. How's the digital economy tied to this? I think there's some obvious answers to that could become goals for a project, but there's a lot of this stuff going here. I don't see any hands raised. Okay, cool. I'm going to skip on to the next question on our list here. Hopefully no one is asleep or we haven't lost too many people. All right, here's the next question. Again, 30 seconds on the clock here. Why are people doing this already? What's preventing people from changing? Again, we're just kind of thinking about the possibilities here. What's keeping folks from taking the actions that they might take in order to change this condition, change their behavior, or how they act? Okay, that's 30 seconds. I'm going to flip my timer now and 2 minutes to write about it. We're about a minute in. Just about a minute to scratch down as many ideas as you can think of. I see some really important ideas already popping up in chat. And I'm sure there's a whole lot of in Zoom speak plus ones. Oh, we see that too. About 30 seconds. Okay, hopefully that was enough time to get some thoughts down. I'm going to scroll through the chat here. I see some popped up. Lack of mentorship or guidance to discuss ideas. Old school techniques to try to get at new school opportunities. Funding. Fear of loss due to limited guidance and support. Scarcity of resources. Absolutely. Inability to support themselves during a transition period and currently comfortable. Yeah, not enough pain from the problem to be able to overcome. Somebody said, is it a headache or a migraine? You know, a headache you might not treat. You might take some kind of low dosage of something over the counter, but a migraine, you're definitely going to get treated. Exposure to the type of digital employment and possible options, still foreign concept. Don't have enough peers earning good, reliable incomes from digital sources to make the personal investment. Oh, so jump into some solutions already. Perhaps digital employment trade fairs. I like the way you're thinking. Residents need access to training and education, so they don't have access to these opportunities. National digital and tech employers need to be recruited and introduced to the service area. Yeah, they don't know you, you don't know them. People can't see what the opportunities are. Don't have a trusted someone to show them the way. Family pressure. Being too comfortable, not feeling enough pain to change it. That's one that I have I've heard of, but not had expressed quite that, have not seen expressed quite that way. A lot of times our culture sort of pigeonholes us to do certain things and live a certain lifestyle. Good. Yeah. Seems like folks are on the right track here. Okay. So I'm going to skip on and talk about project goals. You've established what the needs are. There's a pain point that's affecting people in your community. Hopefully you establish that there's a pain point affecting people in the community and that there's something that's painful enough, enough of a migraine that they'll actually take some treatment. What's preventing them from taking a treatment? That's the need for the project. That's the rationale in a nutshell. When we talk about the goals, though, the goals are also about meeting people's needs. They're about understanding what things would look like at the end of your project. So if you cast your mind all the way to the end of your project, whatever the project might be, right? It's not really specific what it is, but what outcomes or goals would you expect to occur if the barriers and obstacles that were mentioned before were taken away and people, as my dad would say, if you act right, if people did what exercise the behaviors that would lead them to a more beneficial place, what would that look like? And so that's what project goals are. And so begin sort of thinking with the end of the project in mind as you reflect on this prompt, which is what does done look like for this project? The idea that you guys, 30 seconds. This set of questions, I'll watch the chat and I'll also wait until the end and cover things again. Okay, so that was 30 seconds and I'm gonna put 2 minutes on the clock here. We're gonna run through 2 or 3 prompts here before we do sort of the report out phase again. All right, so that was what is done look like for the project. 2 minutes on the clock here. Got 60 seconds left. This one's a little bit more challenging. Okay, that's the timer on that one. And again, that's a really tough one, but hopefully it's getting people thinking about what that end state would look like and also how you would know it. I know it when I see it. Well, what would you see at that end state? And let's skip to the next and again, 30 seconds and then a 2 minute timer. So for this one, the question is, whose needs will you meet? And I put this note there. It's not always, it's never just your participants. It's never just the direct beneficiary whose needs are being met. Your organization, you as a professional or a volunteer participant, other stakeholders, funders, they have needs as well that are being met through this project. So keep them in mind as well when you brainstorm and sort of write down. The more specific you can be on this, the easier it is to target stakeholders and participants later on. So I'd encourage you to think about very specific groups and target them. So with 30 seconds to think about it. About 2 minutes to write down whose needs you're going to meet. Put yourself at the top of the list, I hope. Still about 45 seconds left. Okay, 2 minutes. I always like the answers to this one because, and as you heard, I always encourage people to put themselves at the top of the list because your motivation, your desire, your passion for the work that you do is what's going to sustain you through the commitment of and struggle that it takes to accomplish community development, economic development work. And so I like this slide for myself because it reminds me of why I'm committed to this work, why I'm committed to my community, to the work that we're doing with SOAR, with other stakeholders. And so I always think it's fun to be able to reflect on what keeps me tied to the good work that we're all attempting to accomplish. Okay, so this one asks what kind of improvements you would expect if the problem is solved and people change. Remember, human-centered means we're focusing on changes for people and not just the beneficiaries, but also for you and the organizations that are involved, because it's important to understand the motivations of stakeholders, why other people, why you in particular, me in particular, stay committed and engaged, but why other people engage also. So think about this in terms of the participants' improvements. What are they going to see as benefits? But also the stakeholders and the funders. How will they improve? What capacity will increase for them? Okay, so I'm gonna flip the 2-minute timer and hopefully everybody can brainstorm some ideas about benefits or improvements. End of the day, when this is done, who wins? What does winning look like? Okay, so that's 2 minutes. I gotta ask, is that an excruciatingly long period of just awkward silence for you? Or is that just way too little time to write everything down? So when we talk about goals for a community, we're thinking about the end state and things that will change, who will benefit, who we're going to impact. And that gives us an idea of who we're trying to reach and what we're trying to accomplish, but also an idea of who we need to travel along with and what they will help us to accomplish. Candace shared a couple of things in here stepwise. So the end state looks like an increase in businesses that can promote the economy positively and provide for the needs of the community with local support and advancement to the region, state, and broader. The beneficiaries, the people who would go along, include local government, children, schools, me, them, their family, housing, land, extra activities in parks, and kinds of improvements would be roads, community aesthetics, schools, family staying, expansion of businesses, use of land, housing to make change and make livable. Anthony has mentioned Telework USA doing some good things in Eastern Kentucky for those that aren't familiar with their work and services. Awesome. Skipping ahead to project realities. These are the environmental conditions. The reality is the thing that's in your face, right? It's like Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a plan until you get hit in the mouth, right? Realities are the punch that you might receive to the mouth often enough, but it's also the assets and resources that you're working with. Because I like to say assets are things that take time to build up, can get spent in the blink of an eye, and so they have to be judiciously expended. And also, you can't spend what you ain't got. So, you have to take time to build up that bank account or that reserve of friendship and trust that's necessary to get projects done. But these are the project realities that everyone faces. It's the environment and the conditions that shape what's possible, including the existing conditions that are outside of your organization and your organization or your personal control, and also the possible partners that you might work with. In addition, it's who else is working on this kind of problem and what they have tried before, how they're conditioned to think and feel about the problem. And then finally, it's about the resources or assets that you can gain access to or influence or control over in order to put them on the table to work a problem. So just like before, I'm gonna go through questions with about 30 seconds and then with a 2-minute timer and let y'all brainstorm and then write for a second, write for a couple of minutes actually. Okay. Important question. Who else is working in this space along with you? Okay, that's your time here. And for the sake of brevity, because this is a pretty straightforward question, I'm gonna cut our time down to 1 minute for writing about who else is working in space. So a little faster scribbling this time, but usually it's a shorter list. Maybe it's not though. Maybe you've got a benefit of a deep bench of potential partners. Moving on to the next question. What have they tried? What else has been tried to solve this problem? Is it completely new and nobody's done anything before? Or is it something that others have attempted to resolve and have been unsuccessful or who have had limited success? Okay. Same as before. I'm gonna cut our time a little bit this time down to just 1 minute so that we hopefully don't spend too much time disparaging our neighbors or coworkers even. But yeah, just 1 minute here to think about what else has been tried. Next question here. Really important one. Here's a chance to be critical of your neighbors. Why hasn't what has been tried in the past been effective? Okay, now I'm gonna turn over for 1 minute and let y'all write why projects from the past have not been successful. All right. So obviously, other people have worked in this space and they've had limited success or maybe no success at all. If they've been completely successful, there's no longer a problem to solve. But the gaps in what has happened and the reasons why there has been limited success are critically important in approaching others and asking for a different approach, a new school solution rather than old school solution, as someone said above. So I just want to switch our attention over and talk about resources because I am really fond of saying you can't spend what you ain't got. Right? There's a blues song. You can't spend what you ain't got, and you can't lose what you ain't never had. And so I think that's a really important context when we talk about asset-based economic development because there are all these capitals. There are 7 different kinds of capitals we talk about in community development, and when they flow freely, you can actually have startup communities thrive, tech economies, startup communities thrive when these capitals are flowing freely. But because they're scarce, people tend to guard them. And the only way to get people to not be as guarded about them is to grow the number of or the amount or availability of these resources in your local ecosystem. So talk about the things you know, the people you know, the money you have access to, the way people are connected up to be able to share information and knowledge, the attitudes and cultural history that you have, the physical infrastructure, and then the institutional capital, which is how your laws and policies and local governments and educational institutions and all the institutions in your ecosystem work together. So I get too trapped into trying to classify them according to these 7 capitals, but this is a useful framing for understanding it's not just money we're talking about. We're also talking about your time and attention to be able to apply the most scarce resource that you have, which is your time, to solving a problem. So when we think about what the resources are available to you to work with, I'm actually going to give you a bit longer to think about or to reflect on these things before writing. I'm going to do 2 minutes on the clock for reflection here. When you think about this, a useful frame of reference is often what do you have that you own, control, or can influence? Because it's really not much of a resource to you if you don't own it, aren't able to spend it, can't exercise some control or influence over how you or other people use it. That's oftentimes a useful frame of reference to take it out of the realm of, well, they ought to, and into the realm of, we will do something. Because, like I said before, can't spend what you ain't got. If you don't own it, you can't control it, you can't influence it. It's not really yours. It's not part of your toolbox. It's not a resource that you can work with. All right, I'm going to flip the timer and give you another 2 minutes to write down what you brainstormed about resources. Okay, time's up on that one. So what the realities are, the environment that you're working in, limitations, the other potential actors, and then of course what your currency is, what resources and assets that you have that you can spend, so to speak, on solving a problem. So if those are the realities, your options are the ways that you might combine assets or resources in order to meet needs. So your project options answer your question, really two questions, really simple questions, and we'll put them up here in sequence. What could you do? What's the universe of options of everything that you have to work with? What could you do to help solve this problem? And the second question we'll spend some time on is what should you do? Because sometimes what you can do and what you should do aren't exactly the same thing. And so it can be helpful to think about what is possible, the whole range of options, as many of them as you can, and what could you do, but then to narrow that down to what the right thing to do is, either because it's more ethically or morally responsible, but also because more importantly, because it's what's feasible. It's what you have the most resources to be able to accomplish. It makes sense as the next step that you would take. So I'm going to shorten our time again on these because they're fairly straightforward questions. We'll do 30 seconds on a reflection and then a minute on writing with these. It's 30 seconds on the clock for what could you do? As many ideas as possible. Okay, 1 minute. Take those ideas from the headspace, put them down on the paper space or the digital writing space. Okay, for this next question, we're going to really shorten the time. We're going to do 30 seconds and 30 seconds. 30 seconds to think, 30 seconds to write. Because here's the thing, by this point, if you don't know what you should do, all the time in the world, if you don't have any idea, all the time in the world is not going to let you decide what you should do. You definitely need to go back, take stock of the problem, what other people have done, who you might work with, who your stakeholders are, and think more about the activities and solutions. Guilt free, but think more about the previous questions in order to arrive at a better understanding of what you should do. So 30 seconds to think, and then 30 seconds to write down what you should do. Candace, I love what you put there. Okay. So that's reflection period, 30 seconds here to just kind of write down some ideas about what the option that you think is most viable is. What should you do? Love it, Candace. You don't need grant money for that. That's the important thing. Lead by example. Cool. Okay, so the last thing on our need to grow, the W or W's, as the case may be, is the work plan and the will. right? So we asked a second ago, what could you do and what should you do? This is really the answer to the question, what will you do? Right? What will you and others do? And really the project work plan is the answer to what will you collectively, you plural, you and others do. So the work plan is a commitment to organize in a timely fashion to get things done. And so this section, I'm going to flip over to the next slide. I'm just going to show you the slide and then suggest a framework for how you might begin to build a work plan based on what you wrote down in the previous wrote down in response to the previous prompts. Because this is one of those things that's usually way outside the scope of just an hour-long project. But for most people, taking 15 or 20 minutes can really get you in this framework, can get you started on the next steps of what you think's most likely to lead you in the direction of success. So this is a helpful framework. What I'd say is taking this and sketching out 4 columns for a work plan was the task, which is a specific task that's required to carry you forward, the person who is responsible for taking that action, the resources that that person will need to take that action, and of course, assumed in that is an understanding of who owns or controls or influences those resources and how that ownership or control or influence will be gifted, loaned, or given to the person who's taking action. Because I told someone the other day, I said, if my task is to tap dance, I'm going to need some serious lessons, a set of shoes, and a dance studio to work in. And I don't have any talent for this. So somebody's going to have to point me in the direction of where to get the shoes, where to, most importantly, get the lessons, and where the studio is, where all that's going to take place. But I can't do it without the resources that I need. And then how long do I have to do it? How long do I have to learn how to tap dance? Or how long do I have to complete the tasks that's set out in front of me? So if you take a sheet of paper or an Excel spreadsheet or Word document, Google Doc, whatever your brainstorming and writing format of choice is, and you've divided up into these 3 columns, you can begin to think about the what will you do work planning aspect of your concept paper. And then an important part of the overall concept paper is taking all this information and synthesizing it so that this information is clear and understandable to your stakeholders and yourself and to potential funders, so that they know who you're working with, who's going to be doing what, and when it's going to take place. Now, you might not get down to the task level in the concept paper. When you pull it all together, you'll probably just describe it as a group of activities or a group of things that can take place. But the task level of detail eventually is going to be necessary for a solid work plan to become the foundation of your proposal. So at the task level, you're talking about as small a steps as possible that lead to a larger project activity. In the concept paper, you're really describing the project activity. And we've provided or will provide an outline for the concept paper. We're asking for you to provide us with a project title, a description of the project, where it's going to take place, who it will serve, who will be involved in it, both the beneficiaries as well as other stakeholders, who your project team is, outcome, and some idea of budget. It's pretty straightforward. This is the kind of stuff that most grant applications are asking for. Proposal narratives will require all of this information and then some. But for a brief couple of pages, 2 to 4 page paper, this will be a really powerful tool to get started. And in its early stages, it doesn't need to be perfect. For you to read and understand where you're going, it doesn't even have to be very well written, right? It just needs to be on the page, probably like your notes are right now, just a few scribbles. Like I said, we can decorate the Christmas tree later. First, we got to get the stand in the right location with the central stem and a few branches on it. We might even need to move the location around the living room a few times to figure out where the right place for the tree is. But before you can decorate the tree, you have to have it in the right place and have to have the skeletal structure of it. Then you can figure out what your star on top or your North Star for your project is and what sort of other ornamentation you want to have. But in your early stages, you're just going to have a scraggly old tree and trying to figure out where to place it. And that's fine for internal use, for personal use, for sharing with your team members and so forth. No judgment at that stage. It's going to get a little bit more refined when you send it out to stakeholders, because you're going to be asking stakeholders specifically for something. Embedded in this structure is that part 7. When you get down to talking about budget, you're talking about acquiring support and resources that are necessary to carry out a project. And so fundamentally, when you pull all this information in response to these prompts together, you should have a tool, paper, that evolves as an organizing structure for presenting ideas to others and for gaining support from others that will be important to understanding how your project's going to be executed, and then understanding who has control of what resources that need to come into play at what point in time in order to have a successful project. And so we'll share out a framework for this, really, really straightforward and simple. We're not trying to complicate your world by any means. We're looking for progress, not perfection, as they say. But if we could get, or we are requesting that we get this in the next 2 weeks sent back to us so that we can do the fun part, which is reviewing them, reading through, seeing what your ideas are, and then doing hopefully some matchmaking around those ideas that would match you up with some potential funding opportunities. There's some ideas that have come forward today, though, that I would encourage you to embrace, because not everything takes external resources. A lot of times, project development, concept development, conversations with stakeholders, that process uncovers resources and assets that you don't have to ask anybody for their support to have control over. Grants are all about asking somebody else for their help and support, because you can't do something without, or it's enhanced if you get external support. But the process of organizing ideas and bringing concepts and stakeholders together is a process of surfacing and bubbling up resources that you didn't know that you had access to, that you didn't know that you had influence or control over. And most importantly, that you don't have to ask anyone else's permission to use in order to make progress in your community. And along the way, you can document the type of improvements that you're making in a way that gives the grant organization, the grantor organization, a high level of confidence that you're making progress, that you're trustworthy, that you know what you're doing. And at the end of the day, narrating that trust, narrating in a way that ensures that the grantor trusts you and that you're aligned with their project ideas, is probably the most important skill of grant writing and proposal development. If I'm going to give you money, I'm going to make an investment in you. I want to know that I'm going to return on that investment, that you're accountable, and that you're going to be highly successful. And we think that you all can be. So got a few minutes left here for any questions that you might have. I don't think that I saw any just random letters pop up in the chat, like it's the sign of somebody who's fallen asleep at their keyboard. And I don't think that we actually had that many casualties of either boredom or fear of writing process there in the last hour and a half. Love to answer any questions that you might have.
Nathan, I'm viewing everything. I don't see any questions. Just want to let everyone know that we will be sending out this template that Nathan alluded to in the final slide there, that kind of has all the different components of the concept paper, and we're going to review those. And part of this is we're going to provide feedback, and then we're going to select a handful of really high-level proposals, and we're going to help you take that to the next level and really dive in a little bit with you, with the help of CORI and their partners as well. So I know this is a lot of work, but I know there's several grant people on this webinar today, and I think you all would agree that some of the best ideas, at least that I've been a part of, have kind of started with just putting an idea on paper and beginning to kind of flesh it out. I like to use a camera analogy, especially if you've ever used manual focus, for us older people in the room, of you kind of have the idea, it's just a little bit out of focus, and you're just constantly working to make the image, and in this case your idea, as crystal clear as you can. So we'll be getting that information out along with the YouTube of today's sessions so that you can go back and watch it if you feel like that would be worthwhile. And then the Microsoft Word templates and a PDF will be sent out hopefully by the end of the day today, at the latest over the weekend or first thing Monday morning. So I'm going to open it up again. Anyone in chat want to have a question or just give us some feedback? I see Sandy's feedback, a very constructive webinar. Melissa Vermillion, very worthwhile. Those are some pretty high marks, Nathan. Those folks are very experienced grant people in Eastern Kentucky. So that's quite a compliment. So
Probably also the meanest people on the call if they're grants people.
Candace, thank you very much. Again, if you all have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Nathan, and we have set up a email address that was on the last slide. It'll be in the template as well. It's just CORI@SOAR-KY.org. So again, we'll get that out as soon as we get the video downloaded and up to YouTube. So there's not any more questions. Nathan, any parting words of advice, words of wisdom?
No, I'll never shut up if I got time to talk, right? Here's the thing. There is no community in the SOAR region or any rural part of this country that can't come to the table with an idea that will connect up to their digital economy from exactly where they are today. You may not have a lot of resources. You may not be able to be the most effective grant writer. Lord knows I started somewhere. Terrible grant writer to begin with. May not be that good now, to be honest with you, but we've done some good work based on the quality and feedback of the stakeholder groups that we work with, starting at all different starting points, super advanced, well organized, all the way across, because I don't believe in hierarchies in community development, all the way across to the community that's just getting started, that just lost the paper mill or the mine closed and really doesn't know where to go. Don't let this, like the formality of these kind of processes or the fact that there's writing involved or narration involved, deter you from getting the ideas out and sharing the ideas, because there's someone that cares about what happens in your community that can help you to meet you across the table, to add the elements, the numbers, the whatever's scaring you. You can recruit a partner to commit to helping you fill in the gaps that you might have that are keeping you from approaching community development and approaching grant writing as part of community development in an effective way. And Sandy's question, will all the concept proposals? Yes, all the concept proposals that we receive, we will provide review comments and feedback on, and matchmaking, speed dating, if you will, speed dating for grants. We will provide comments and feedback on all the proposals that we receive. That there's not a grant for everything. We all know that. There's not a grant for every project that you might have, but we'll provide as the best comments and feedback that we possibly can to help match up project ideas and improve project ideas.
Great, Nathan. Yes. Great, Nathan. I just want to add too, I know several of you like Sandy are representing organizations, but also have a lot of contacts within the region. Feel free to send out the link to the YouTube video and the templates out to communities that you feel like this would be a good fit for, because we have all of these recorded on YouTube, because we know everyone can't always make it to these events. So be on the lookout for an email. Please check your spam or junk folder, because these recaps and links will come via constant contact. So if you don't have anything in your mailbox by Monday, please feel free to reach out to me, and I will make sure that we get it to your email. But again, that'll come from our constant contact email address. And again, any questions, CORI@SOAR-KY.org, or you can email me as well at Joshua@SOAR-KY.org. So I hope everyone has a great weekend, and we will conclude right on time on a Friday. How about that? Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much.